Formula One's second qualifying sprint race was a lot more dramatic, or shall we say influential, than its counterpart at Silverstone. And that's because just in the space of a few minutes, really, just on a Saturday afternoon at Monza, Lewis Hamilton has dropped from yesterday front row of the grid P2 to P4 now. And Pierre Gasly, who qualified really well for the sprint race yesterday for AlphaTauri Honda, is going to be at the back of the grid as a result of a first corner skirmish. Front wing end plate collapsed, hit the ground. He ran wide through the Curva Grande. Had quite a lot of time to get the car relatively straight, but nonetheless hit the barrier. So bad luck for Pierre. I think, when all the team owners were talking about the sprint race and whether it should come into Formula One, and there's a lot of pressure, I think, from Liberty to brighten up the show, a lot of them were thinking, this is going to be good for some, but not necessarily good for others. I think the front-running teams would all have been thinking, not sure we need this. Do we need another potential risk going into a first corner or off the line? Whereas everybody else probably would have been thinking, yeah, go for it. Here's an opportunity. Probably AlphaTauri Honda were in that bracket, although of course they would have been influenced by Red Bull. I think there'll be a bit of thinking about it after this, particularly certainly at Mercedes, because although Valtteri Bottas from the pole made a very good start, clean side of the grid, and as indeed Max Verstappen did from P3, clean side of the grid, Lewis Hamilton in P2, dirty side of the grid, on the medium Pirelli was just swamped by the two McLarens and almost by Pierre Gasly. I mean, that was part of the skirmish going into that first chicane, but certainly swamped by the two McLaren-Mercedes, which started on the soft tyre. And it's very easy to say it now, I know, but more than most, Mercedes actually had more sets of soft tyres going into the sprint race. And you've got to ask why. You can understand with Valtteri on the clean side of the grid, on the pole, take the conservative route, run the medium. But why wouldn't they put the soft tyres on Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes? You would imagine Mercedes would be thinking, we got to get him grip off the line. We got to make sure he doesn't get swamped into that first corner. And looking at the top speed yesterday of the McLaren-Mercedes, you'd also be thinking, what if they run the soft tyre? We need to be able to fight back against the McLarens. But that didn't seem to enter into it. And yet McLaren did exactly the right thing, put the soft tyre on. If they can get in front of Lewis, brilliant. And then maybe they could stay in front, even if the tyres started to go off at the end of that 18-lap phase. And here's another thing to put it into perspective. They're all starting on the soft tyre tomorrow as well. So why wouldn't Lewis have done that? To me, that was where that race went for Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, he made a bad start on the dirty side of the grid. These things happen. But beyond that, if he'd been on the softer tyre, he would have had more grip off the line, and perhaps he might have been able to finish at least third, if not second in that race. As it was, the top speed of the McLaren, even when Lewis was in DRS behind Lando Norris, the top speed of the McLaren was enough to keep Lando in front, so that by the end Lewis was backing away. There was nothing he could do to beat Lando Norris. And a great drive at the front of the race by Valtteri Bottas. He knows he's got that penalty tomorrow, but a nice clean drive today. Max Verstappen disappearing behind him in his mirrors. Max was delighted, of course, to finish second on the road and to get the pole there for tomorrow. And for the two McLarens, gamble paid off on the soft tyre, brilliant to see. And they will be saying, yeah, bring it on, more sprint races. Lewis Hamilton, by contrast, the Mercedes, will be saying, without the sprint race, it would have been a lot cleaner for us going into the Grand Prix, obviously from the front row. Now Lewis has got those two McLaren Mercedes to beat, and that is not going to be easy, given the top speed, as we've seen, of the two McLarens. The two Ferraris finished behind Lewis in 6th and 7th place, Charles Leclerc ahead of Carlos Sainz. Great job by Ferrari to get Carlos Sainz's car repaired. Big shunt this morning in the untimed practice as he was going into the Ascari chicane. In reality, the same shunt Carlos Sainz had at Zandvoort on Saturday morning. Both of them as a result of over-aggressive driving in a change of direction situation. In the case of Zandvoort, as I say, he was going through that right-hand kink, getting ready for the left-hander, too much throttle, too much braking, lost the rear and went off. And it was the same today going into Ascari. He went into the left, back end came out, and without creating any sort of flat car area in which to manipulate the car, as a Charles Leclerc would, as a Max would, as a Lewis would, to get the car going the other way, it set up a pendulum effect, and all of a sudden he was complete passenger and went off on the outside. So a really big shunt for Carlos Sainz. And this is a function, as I've been saying all year, of the way Carlos drives. He always wants a slightly later apex than, say, his teammate Charles Leclerc. And he always wants to be aggressively loading up the rear on the outside in order to get the feel he wants from the car. But when he's doing these rapid changes of direction, the car quite clearly on these Pirellis cannot take it. Anyway, to get back to the point, Ferrari mechanics did a very good job. Carlos then finished behind Charles Leclerc, who wasn't happy, hasn't been happy with his car all weekend. It's a difficult car to drive. Although watching Charles from the outside, you'd think, yeah, the Ferrari looks pretty good. Looks to be cornering on rails. But of course, there's a lot of work going on inside the cockpit. And then in 8th place, a very good drive. The drive really that we never saw at Zandvoort was Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo, finishing P8 and beating Sergio Perez to the line. A lot of pressure from Perez in the late stages of the race, but a great drive by Antonio, really good to see. And the Alfa Romeo Ferrari about 8 kilometers quicker in a straight line than the two factory Ferraris as well. What that says is that the factory Ferraris have actually got quite a lot of downforce on them. And is that a good thing for the race? Well, of course, we'll see tomorrow how it transpires, but a very good result for Alfa Romeo. So it was short and sweet. What it did, the sprint race at Monza, it changed the grid dramatically so far as Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly are concerned. Without Valtteri Bottas there, we now have Max Verstappen in the Red Bull Honda, which we knew wasn't going to be the quickest package around Monza, on the pole. And he's very relaxed and he's very calm, and he's going to be very, very difficult now for Lewis Hamilton to beat. And I say Lewis because we're thinking of the championship. Given the problems he had trying to beat the two McLarens today, it's going to be difficult for Lewis tomorrow. So an excellent afternoon for Red Bull and Max, brilliant afternoon for the two McLaren-Mercedes, particularly for Daniel Ricciardo to see him back going so well again, and a very clean, efficient drive by Valtteri Bottas. My only complaint about the whole thing was that at Silverstone, we had a nice garland for Max Verstappen. Here, the three drivers got Olympic medals. Yeah, kind of okay, but I love those garlands. We should be keeping them in Formula One, and let's bring them back.